My wife and I have been together for 5 years, married for 3, and have no children. For our first few years together, she was a full-time attorney working 50 to 60 hours per week. At that time, her income was approximately 40% higher than mine. The income disparity did not bother me at all. I mean, who doesn't like more money? But neither of us was happy about the amount of hours she had to spend at work. When we met, she was already pretty burnt out and unhappy with the stressful job. I tried my best to be supportive and encourage her to look for other jobs that would be less stressful. She was open to it, but knew it would be a big pay cut. She said she would rather stick it out for a while longer so we could pay off her student loans and save money for a new house. Once the loans were gone and we had moved into our new home, she found a part-time /15HRS//WK job working from home doing something more in line with her interests. Her stress level went way down, and so did her income. She still makes very good money, but her income is about a third of her previous job. This is absolutely not a problem financially. My income has steadily increased and she's still bringing in plenty. We are doing great and have no money problems. I have no regrets about any of it. The thing is, every once in a while, she'll mention that she feels sad that she doesn't contribute because her income is so much lower than mine. I tell her this is absolutely not true. Not only does she still have great income, but she contributes in so many other ways. Since she has a very flexible work schedule, she is able to do most of the household chores, takes care of errands during the day, does a lot of the shopping, etc. She basically keeps our household running. But I think in her mind, the work she does for our household does not make up for the loss in income. She recently found out we are eligible for health insurance through one of her attorney organization memberships. She sent me the details, but it turned out that our current plan we have through my job is still a better deal. I texted her and said I looked into it, but we should stick with what we have. When I got home from work, I could tell she was feeling down. She told me she had gotten excited at the possibility that we could use something through her work, and that she would be providing something major. She was crushed when I told her we shouldn't use it. I felt terrible. While she was working at her old job, we decided we wanted to start a family. The ideal situation was for her to get a low-hour, flexible, work-from-home job so she could be a stay-at-home mom with a little bit of income on the side. This job popped up and it seemed almost perfect for us. Unfortunately, the baby has not come as quickly as we had hoped, which we knew was a possibility. So we are kind of in limbo where she doesn't want to quit her current job or start a new full-time job, because she could get pregnant at any time. So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent, I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclosed this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother, into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young, and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. So, my fiancé took up cooking during quarantine. We used to cook little and instead ate a lot out of the house. We could afford it and tended to eat healthy. Of course, we can both cook, but given our busy schedule, it was easier to eat out. Also, to be honest, I don't really like cooking and consider it a chore to be avoided. I love food, but there are other things that I would rather do in my own time. Due to quarantine, my fiancé has decided to cook more and has found that she enjoys it a lot. This is great. I am happy for her that she has discovered something new that brings her joy. Turns out she's pretty good at it too, and she cares about learning new skills, etc., so I benefited too. I still don't really like cooking myself, as I said, so in exchange for her putting all that effort into cooking, I help her out by paying for takeout in the evenings when she doesn't feel like cooking, and also I do everything else, wash the dishes, clean the table, etc. on the days she cooks. To the best of my knowledge, she agreed that this was an appropriate compromise, and of course, if she felt it was unfair, I would be happy to fill the gap in other ways. But she seemed to enjoy it. As her culinary experiments expanded into baking and became more complex overall, she began to involve me in cooking. I would go into the kitchen to have a drink and check it out, and she would say, "Oh, could you help me chop this while I fry this?" Or something like that. I cut carrots for her or something like that, chatted with her about food, and then went back to my business. I didn't mind it at all. But gradually I became her sous chef, especially when she wants to cook food together. Keep in mind that her culinary experiments are complex and sometimes take 2 or more hours. So my whole evening goes into these culinary endeavors, and it happens several times a week. On top of that, she tends to boss me around in the kitchen and can be a little rude. As you can probably guess, we got into a fight over this. I told her that I don't like her attitude in the kitchen when I help, and I don't like to cook in general. I would feel better helping her if she wasn't so rude to me. But honestly, I don't want to spend 8+ hours every week cooking. It's not my hobby, it's hers. If she wanted me to take part in cooking, I bought everything or cooked something simple. She was very upset. She said it was unfair, that I was enjoying the fruits of her labor but not doing my part. And that cooking took 2 hours and dishwashing / cleaning only half an hour. I told her that it was her decision to cook very complex dishes and that I would be happy if she made a simple pizza or roast. After a certain point, the sophistication of her dishes moves into hobby territory. And I resent being made to feel like a bad partner because I don't want to spend a few evenings on her hobby. We haven't really worked it out. I actually bought / cooked my own food a few times so I didn't enjoy the fruits of her labor. But that seemed to upset her even more, and our refrigerator started to fill up with more leftover food than she could eat herself. Another time I helped her but told her I had to go on video chat at 8 p.m. and she got upset when I actually stopped helping, and left even though I told her beforehand. I'm afraid I told her somewhat caustically that I was not her sous chef to command the kitchen. I tried to discuss it with her again when we felt calmer. I told her that I liked that she found a new hobby. But it's her hobby and I can't help it and don't want to feel obligated to do it. She countered that it was not feminist of me to put the cooking on her and benefit from it without helping her. The feminist connection doesn't make much sense to me because neither of us used to cook much. And she decided to take up cooking herself, but of course I didn't tell her that. I told her that if she wanted to discuss the division of labor in our household, we could do so and come up with something new that reflected the fact that she now cooks more. We tried to do this, but she wanted to count all the time she spends cooking as time around the house. So, according to her ideal distribution of housework, she spends over 10 hours cooking just dinner each week, which somehow leaves me with almost all other chores around the house. I told her I didn't like it because cooking complicated meals is a hobby. It's not fair to say that 6/10 hours of her housework is actually her hobby, and I have to do the equivalent amount of real housework if that makes sense. So we are in a bit of an impasse. Am I really a bad feminist? I don't think I'm wrong. I'm very familiar with emotional labor, mental stress, and all that, but I may be wrong. I love this woman and obviously want to marry her. But we are usually good at making logical decisions, and this is the first time we have had such a disagreement. I don't know how to get her to understand the line between cooking as a necessary activity and cooking as a hobby. P.S. The fiancé has taken up cooking gourmet meals as a hobby. But now it becomes my responsibility to help out and do more housework that I don't think I should. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care. I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31-year-old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill. was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man?